I'm already late enough. We can go live. Sup, nerds. Sorry for the amount I've not been around. It's been a very busy couple months, honestly, but we're here. We made it for a Wednesday stream, even if we're a lot later than usual. We'll get a few videos today. I'm going to stream more this week. Maybe tomorrow. Honestly, probably tomorrow. I'm really behind on shit. I also can't stream long today because I also have to film ads. I'm feeling good. Can't complain. Just been horrifyingly busy recently. Jeez, you guys went crazy with the subs. Rad started us off 3 hours before we even went live. Thank you for that. Then Stu dropping 5 right when I was initially supposed to go live and then had to delay because technical difficulties. How about a TTV with the Prime? Thank you for that. NMG with the 28 months. Wendro here with the 4 months of Prime. Appreciate that a ton. Wabo with the cheer. Thanks for the bits. Chesk with the 5 bomb. Thank you so much for that. V-Bits here with the Prime for 3 months. Aiden hitting 4 months. Appreciate that. Anything new? Just crazy busy. Finally can use my hand a little bit more. I still can't like hold things with it or do a lot of the stuff I'd like to do, but at least I can like not always be in the splint. Jesus Christ, Wabo. Did you just drop another 10? You guys are going crazy right now. Thanks, V-Bits, for the 3 months. Aiden for the 4. Oh, that was already there. Joe Simo here with the 5 months. Thanks for teaching you in the coding community. I'm not here to teach. I'm here to rant, but if you guys learn things from it, I appreciate that a ton. Wabo with another 5 and the 10 he just did. Goddamn. NMG with the 10. Are you two competing right now? Goddamn. Thank you always, all of you guys, for the support. It's insane. 36 months from Rudo. Jesus Christ. Uber with the 13 months. Thank you for that. And CE with the 10 months. Appreciate that a ton. Nemesis is Codex. That name means something very different nowadays. Appreciate you. Thanks for the 4 months of support. Wabo with a cheer on top of all the gifts. Jesus Christ, man. Aritmia Batila or Petito. Hopefully I got that. I'm calling you Petito. Thank you for the 4 months. Appreciate it a ton. Wabo with the 10 bomb. Still, Jesus Christ, you guys are going crazy today. And then Mark Games with the Prime. Thank you all so much. What is this? Filters out the noise. Stop carrying 70k tokens of tools you'll never use. It's like tree shaking, but for MCP. You got my attention real quick. Also, hi, YouTube chat. Sorry. Star in that for sure. Thank you for the link. Interesting. Oh, this from the... Ooh. This actually looks really fun. Thank you for the link. Oh yeah, I saw this. This is a very, very political thing. Probably not the best thing for me to touch. Yeah, I heard the new Next Faster is coming. That'll be fun. Yeah, thank you, Late Mate, for this, by the way. That's a really cool link. Good shit. I do actually, more than usual, want help from you guys for figuring out some topics, because there's just been, like, no fucking news. I'm gonna kill this one. Actually, I'll keep the links for another thing I'm thinking of. You can work out a prompt from the input. Do you mean the output? ClickHouse acquired Libre chat? Interesting. Very interesting. Very interesting. Interesting, NMG. Not familiar with the Series A. Enjoy watching your videos. Thanks for doing God's work in the tech space. I'm far from doing God's work. I'm just here to talk about the things I'm interested in, but I love that you guys are so positive about it. Thank you for the cheer. Really appreciate that. And the kind words as well. I don't think I can do a whole video about Bun on Vercel. Keep my Atlas browser up to date. Oh boy. This is the paper for inverting LLMs. This is also really interesting, actually. I want to read that later before doing a video on it. Yes, the first video topic I was going to do today is PewDiePie's Right About AI, where I talk about that video. ChatGPT users can't use servers for tailored legal and medical advice. Interesting. I did see that Ben Holmes did his own state management thing. It was very interesting. This I also saw. Okay, there's enough content here. This could be a video. Anthropic admits they were wrong about MCP. Throw that in here. The other one I wanted to do. Interesting. This could be a video for sure. Why devs keep using old models? This seems really good, actually. Why devs suck at picking languages. That's definitely a vid. Thank you for that link. I am one of like the #1 people who has covered the agentic misalignment thing and Anthropic's lies about this benchmark. I know it very well. Ooh. When did the 2025 survey come out? When did this get published? Interesting. Not quite videoable, but interesting. Where the fuck did I leave my phone? Oh, there it is. I just wanted to turn on the AC. I'm melting in here. AC's on. UI quality is way higher with GPT-5. It's just garbage with Claude is the main problem. This only terrain generator. People keep going so much further with the CSS hacks for 3D shit. That's so cool. July 29th, no worries. I have like a topic direction. That's a bunch of things. Um, OpenAI blog post, the one about how they made this, yeah, Atlas. Yeah, I'll put that in here. Atlas isn't just a Chrome wrapper. Yeah, let's read later. Good. Good. That'll be a vid. Probably not. I'm talking a lot about this. I have multiple videos that are put your state in your URL bar. This looks like one of the better blog posts about this, though. Saving that for reference, but not necessarily another video. I will save this for the future as well. Waiting until there's like something I can actually use with Remix 3. Affinity stuff I could do, but I feel like I'm a little late on it, and I don't have enough videos on the main channel to do second channel shit right now. Ooh, this looks like a fun piece of research as well. Tool planning and scheduling bench. Fun. Let me thank all the subs I missed while I was prepping all of that. We got Kunis here with the 3 months of support. Lasaga here with the 2 months. Favorite dev twink, I'll take it. Cool Guy Max Twitch with the $100 cheer. PewDiePie, damn right. I love 9000 here with a cheer. Enjoy watching your videos. Thanks for that. Yep, thank you again. Wabo here with the additional cheer, and then Doc Devs with the tier 3 resub for 31 fucking months. Goddamn. Oh yeah, the Gemini deal is very interesting. Yeah, it's a video. This is not a video. This would be an ad for Google. Oh yeah, the source maps leaking thing was interesting. Yep, DMCA'd. Expected. Yo, Yash, thanks for the resub. Good to see you, man. As well as Littlefinger here with the 14 months. I haven't used Minimax enough to have good thoughts on it. Okay, Kimmy has their own CLI now. This was made by the guys over at Zed, right? Yep. Good shit. Oh shit, Brian Jordan, good to see you, man. I already have a video on this one. Posted this video a while ago, but I'm going to double down on it with Anthropic's post, probably. The Extropic stuff is cool, but I'm waiting till it's in the hands of people we can trust, or assuming it's real. No worries, real. We have a good set of stuff now, guys. If we're going to do these by priority, I think this is mid-pry. This feels mid-pry. This feels high-pry. This feels mid-pry. I think this should probably come ahead of the others. Drop it cuts off. And if I'm going to do this, it's high-pry. I don't want to do 3 and like, I guess the first one's not Anthropic. Label high-pry. If I switch the order around a little bit, it won't be as bad. This is dead. I don't feel like doing it anymore. Not tried raw rebuild. Don't know if I want my rendering to be that much faster on the server. I don't think it matters that much. Interesting project though. I'll save this to look into later. Maybe I'll read this later. Nextine created a package for streaming. Interesting. Interesting. This is one of those things I feel I will enjoy, but I don't think is videoable. Giga ML Ray 61 mil. Interesting. I'll look into this later. This actually looks really interesting. I'll put this in the list as tools are losing. So who wins? Lower in the list for sure, but interesting topic for sure. DeepSeek's OCR stuff does seem really cool. This is the Discord CLI. Yeah. The React Native Godot stuff seemed really, really cool, but I haven't had a chance. The guy who made it actually reached out. I don't think durable objects are great for agentic work because agents have to spend so much time waiting, and durable objects are built on wall clocks still. I re-added that to my Notion, but I'll do it eventually. I want more shorts, but I have to get more normal length videos first because I'm so behind on those. Yo, Nabari, thanks for the resub. Appreciate that. Let me dump my teabag quick and then set the offset. I'll do the offset first. Offset 002805 should be enough time. My teabag quick. I feel like we have a good set of stuff now. Web fragments. Very interesting. Oh, great. I had a fun issue with Windows. The most recent update fucked up one of the SSDs on one of my computers where it would just randomly disconnect. It was the worst. Sorry to check something. Yeah, anyways. Yeah, that one's annoying. I'll watch this before doing my web fragments thoughts then. Why the fuck is my YouTube being so weird? Okay, there we go. Save. Watch later. I removed that. Fuck, I need to re-add it. I already had it in there. God damn it. Throw this there. Dump that to the bottom. It never is the full 5 hours. I'm going to watch a lot of it, though. Don't worry. I've filled my watch later up so many times. I've written scripts to purge it. I'll eventually do the Java defense video. Okay. I still refuse to upgrade to Tahoe. I've seen too many problems. A video defending Windows would be a lot harder for a bunch of reasons. I always install security updates. Yeah, I've had really bad Windows luck lately. Okay, I think we're ready to get started. Interesting, Lawrence. This is a really good idea. Very good shit, Lawrence. Always good to see you, man. And you very much have my attention with that. Let's start with the Apple Pay and Google one. Is it really interesting? Lawrence, are you raising by chance? If you are raising, hit me up. I would throw money into this. I like where you guys are going. BAML. LM prompts are functions. Interesting. Very interesting. I'll go give this a star. Somebody also made a schema, like a JSON alternative that's for token efficiency. I remember this the name of that. I know Matt mentioned it. Haha. Token-oriented object notation. This could actually be a good video. Context engineering plus BAML. Oh, human layer. I know these guys. Dex is a big fan. We talk all the time. All the time. He really wants to do a sit down and like get me deeper into vibe coding. I see why. Aiden and Wacko starred that? Oh boy. Oh shit, NMG. Yeah, let me know. I'm happy to make referrals for you for any security related stuff. I know you're really good at that shit. Thanks XCSS for the resub. Appreciate that a ton. I think we're ready to get started. Orker just called me on Teams because she didn't know how to check out a branch. Oh god, yeah. We're all going to be fucking replaced with AI. Let's start with the Apple one. Close. Close, close, close. Here we are. One last apology to YouTube chat for me not checking it enough. We haven't talked about PewDiePie yet, don't worry. Marker, Google, and Apple share models now. My hair. Good enough. I'm happy. Let's do it. It's no secret that Apple's been struggling in the AI era. The whole... I think I need some water, actually. Give me one sec. Let's do it. It's no secret that Apple's been struggling a lot in the AI era. Apple Intelligence just kind of hasn't happened, and the quality of experience with Siri is so bad, it's honestly kind of laughable. I can't remember the last time I asked it to do anything more complicated than setting an alarm, and I'm one of those guys that actually uses AI quite a bit. So with all that said, how do they fix it? Where does Apple come back when they're this far behind? Especially when competitors like Microsoft, OpenAI, and Google are leaping so far ahead. They spend their money. That's how they solve this. Apple has so much money that they're sitting on that they are able to spend it to solve these types of problems. And despite spending a ton on training models internally, they just haven't gotten the quality that they need to be competitive, which is why they're partnering with Google for a $1 billion custom model. That already sounds absurd, but as you look into the details, it gets more absurd. Like the fact that they're doing this because it's the cost effective review on that. This is absurd as is, but as you look into the details, it gets crazier. Like the fact that that $1 billion number isn't an arbitrarily chosen super high price tag. It's actually being chosen because this is the cheaper option. Apple's going with Google because the other options they explored would have been more expensive than just paying Google for a custom, I would assume is Gemini 3 based model for them to use for Siri. It's a giant model, 1.2 trillion parameters, and it seems like Apple's not buying their infrastructure. They're just buying the model itself. But unlike Apple, I don't have $1 billion to spend on a custom model, so let's do a quick word from today's sponsor. Cool. Okay, let's dive into this one. Apple nears $1 billion Google deal for custom Gemini model to power Siri. This model is 1.2 trillion parameters, costs $1 billion, originally reported by Mark Gurman, who's very good at having Apple leaks and early Apple news. So this is very likely real information. When you realize that when you remember that Apple's been trying to form partnerships with Anthropic, OpenAI, and now Google, this gets crazy. But where, in my opinion, it gets even crazier is how Apple's positioned in the market. I'm old enough that I remember the days where Apple's number one competitor was Microsoft. And then that shifted over to Google, largely because of Android, if I'm being real. That said, Android makes Google less money than iOS does, so it's a weird balancing situation for them as well, especially when you consider the fact that Google pays a ton of money for Google to be the default search on iPhones. There's a lot of weird money back and forth between Google and Apple. Yeah. Google's paying Apple $18 billion plus a year to be the default search on iOS. So this is Apple giving up a 20th of that to potentially have a horse in the race for AI again. But $1 billion is a lot of money. Can't they spend that to train something better internally? They've been trying, and internally, the biggest model they have is 150 billion parameters. To be clear, parameter measurements are not the only way to know how good a model is or isn't, but we're talking about an order of magnitude difference here between what Google has to offer and what Apple has. And when you realize what Apple's biggest weakness is here, it makes a lot more sense. Apple doesn't have the data they need to train a model. Companies like Google have been collecting, or companies like Google and I want an Excalibur for this. So the big question here, in my opinion, is why can't Apple train a good enough model? There's a lot of layers to this, and we can conspirize all day about the weird things that have happened, including there's yeah. Oops. Yeah. We can conspirize we can come up with conspiracy theories all day about why Apple's struggling so much. One of my favorites is a paper that they published about the illusion of thinking. Apple funded research that helped try and prove that LLMs aren't actually thinking during their reasoning stages, which is interesting because reasoning without question increases the quality of outputs for most models in most scenarios. But they wrote their own research combating the role of the thinking in these models. It was a very interesting piece of research, and it shows that they are thinking a lot about this stuff, but maybe not in the ways they need to. But there's a much bigger issue that they have. Apple doesn't have data. I've seen a lot of posts that are like, which company do you trust more with your data, Apple or Google? And just this type of weird rage baity bullshit on Twitter. If you legitimately believe Google or Microsoft are better with your data than Apple, then you fundamentally don't understand their business models. Apple doesn't make money from your data. They make money selling you hardware and subscriptions to their services. Google makes money off of ad data. Microsoft needs data for almost everything that they're doing. Apple's the one company that doesn't really have a big financial incentive to collect your data, which is why they not only haven't done that, they've actually went out of their way to help their users be on more private encrypted devices and keep their data from leaking. The worst thing that ever happened to Meta was when Apple pushed a change to iOS that made it harder to track people between different apps, because now it's impossible for Because now it's possible for Facebook to know what you're doing in apps like Amazon or other things that they're partnering with. The Facebook tracking pixel was a big deal back in the day, where you'd embed like one little JavaScript file in your websites, and you'd get the fancy Facebook like button, all these other things you want on their sites. But that would give Facebook access to tracking a user across different services. So they could go from one website to another, and if any of them had the Facebook like button, they'd be able to link it back to you and your session and learn a ton about you. Apple, or Google, Facebook, Microsoft, and more have collected so much data over the years that they have a lot of what they need to train these models. So let's think about all the companies that have better models than Apple does. Microsoft does, even though like the Azure models aren't great, they are definitely better than what Apple's been cooking. Obviously, Google is crushing them. Even Meta is arguably crushing them with the Llama series, even though Llama hasn't progressed meaningfully in a while. Speaking of which, where are those bigger versions of Llama 4? Remember when we were promised those like almost a year ago now? The Llama stuff at Meta is chaos, so we won't think about that too much. Regardless, they had the data to make those in the first place. And then, of course, the big two, Anthropic and OpenAI. So obviously, we get how these companies at the top here got their data. They had a business incentive to have data, so they did. And now they have everything they need to train, other than researchers, GPUs, money, all things they can make up for. But what about these two? How did Anthropic and OpenAI manage to do this? This is a controversial take, but I think it's pretty obvious. The way Anthropic and OpenAI were able to train is by scraping data from every source they could find. And the result of that was that they got a good amount of data to do this training. But now, as a result, most of these services have locked down your ability to get data out of them. Services or websites like Twitter and Reddit have fully locked down their APIs, so you can't scrape them the way you could before. It used to be relatively trivial to just watch the fire hose from Twitter and get all of the data that they're having posted on their site, or to have a bunch of APIs crawling Reddit, just collecting endless data. I'd go as far as to say Anthropic and OpenAI's scraping of these services has resulted in me using Reddit way less, because when the Reddit API got restricted, the Reddit apps I used got destroyed as a side effect of that. And Reddit's willingness to destroy and Reddit's desire to sell this data instead of giving it away just took out all of these services I cared about in the crossfire. And that sucks. But now it's not really viable for other companies to have the giant pile of data that Anthropic and OpenAI collected, and all of these other companies got their own separate ways by mostly tracking their users. So all of these companies, for reasons I think make obvious sense, have a shitload of data that is useful for training models. So why doesn't Apple? And I also think it's obvious that Apple doesn't, because of the way they think about and manage data. Historically, Apple doesn't track these things or care to hold these things. They don't have a whole lot of data, which has been great until now. But scraping is far from... But there's also a change happening in how models are being trained right now. Historically, these models were trained on these large corpuses of labeled data in order to try and make next token prediction more reliable. Now the data these models are being trained on isn't just getting bigger constantly. Historically, we've just thrown more data into the pile, tried training for a lot longer, and hoped something smarter came out. There's now effort being put in to try and change how we think about the data going into models. Instead of training models on all of this data that we've collected, what if we create data specifically for them? What if we look at models, or what if we looked at the outputs that people liked when they ask questions and we train on that? What if we generate fake agent runs so that we can have tool calling as some of the stuff in our training data that we use for training these models? What if you had a ton of inputs and outputs for a given model that you could use to retrain a new, smaller, cheaper, faster model? More and more of the data that we're using is programmatically or artificially generated, and a lot of that data is allowing for us to make faster, smaller models. For example, GPT-5 is very clearly trained on a lot of outputs that were created by O3, which is why there's a lot of similarity between those models, but GPT-5 is much cheaper, faster, and overall quite a bit better. I also think this is why models have been popping up in our IDEs that are really good. Like in Cursor in the new agent mode, they introduced Composer 1. Composer is their model that, as far as I understand, is being trained on data that they have as a result of people using Cursor. If you use another model like Claude, or if you use models like Claude or GPT-5, there is a quality of response that you do or don't bother editing with. And if you don't have the privacy mode on in Cursor, that's data that they have. As far as I understand, they're not using that data to steal your services or your code or whatever, but they're absolutely going to use it to make their models better. And I don't have any inside info here. It's my honest understanding that, just as a guess and from the little conversations I've had and blog posts I've read, that Composer is being tuned and trained on the inputs and outputs that users who are volunteering their data to Cursor have generated for them, which allows them to look at the best results from other models to make a better, smaller, faster model, which is why Composer 1 flies in comparison with other things. I also suspect this is how the new model inside of Windsurf works. The Windsurf model doesn't feel quite as smart as Composer, but it's surprisingly good, and it's even faster. It's like 2000 TPS. These models are trained on data from successful runs, which allows them to be better. It also allows them to do formats that are more complex, because otherwise you'd need a much bigger model to have 5 chained tool calls work properly. They're just collecting those tool calls and putting them back in as training data. Makes a ton of sense. What's this link? Interesting. This looks very fun. I'm saving this to read later. Thank you for the link. Yeah. How do I want to explain this next point? So, quick recap. These companies have legacy data. Apple doesn't have any data. The way we're training models is shifting away from trying to train them on existing data from the internet and other sources, and towards trying to train them based on successful runs with previous models, using really smart, heavy, giant models to create data for smaller training runs, and just collecting and carefully curating all of the data that you need. There's even companies that are selling curated data that they pay to have made by humans and then labeled to companies. I've invested in companies that are purely doing fake projects for developers to build, like actual employed devs to work on side projects that will never ship, so they can curate, label, and then sell that data to other labs. So wild, so cool. And it's a big part of why these models are getting smarter and better at code and tool calling and all of that. So where the frickin' hell does Apple fit in here? They're just not on the board. Companies like Cursor and Windsurf have a lot of LLM data coming in and out, so they have this generation, or retake on that. Companies like Cursor and Windsurf have a ton of data going in and out and through these models, which they can use for collecting and eventually training their own. Companies like Microsoft also have a ton of inference going on their platforms, be it through Copilot, the website, or be it through Copilot, the website, Copilot on Windows, or Copilot in your editor. They can use that to reinforce, fine-tune, and train their own things. Google has infinite data. They can do whatever the hell they want. Meta's recently changed policy internally where before they could only use llama models. Now they're letting employees use other models too, and that's going to be a source of some really good data as well. And then obviously Anthropic and OpenAI have enough usage all over the world to collect tons of data. This is actually a thing that Anthropic is so sensitive about, that they are known for cutting different tools out of access to their models. They previously cut Windsurf off, not allowing them to use their model for the things that they were building. They also cut off OpenAI, thinking and accusing OpenAI of using outputs from Anthropic models to train OpenAI models, when in reality, they were just using it for benchmarks, as far as OpenAI has said. I can't know for sure, but I'd believe it either way. Anthropic just cut off Trey, which is by the TikTok team. It's another AI IDE. I did a video that went really viral on it forever ago. I find it to not be particularly good for agentic work, and they've given it way too many tools and the result is chaos. But they were building really heavily around Claude 4 and 4.5, and they had their access hard cut off from those models because, in the words of Dario, they shouldn't have access to this data and I get why. Trey is owned by TikTok, which is owned by ByteDance, which is owned by China, and they don't want Chinese companies to have infinite access to all of this data. But that's all because they know that the inputs and outputs of 4.5 Sonnet are as valuable as 4.5 Sonnet itself at a certain amount, because you can use that data to create your own similar model. Yeah. Anthropic's now cut off a lot of companies. I have a whole separate video about that I'm planning on filming soon. But man, the need for this data is crazy. But if you know anything about these companies, you know that one of them is kind of willing to sell to whoever for the right price. Like, they don't really think about this. They just kind of do it. And that's Google. Google moved their main entity to a parent company called Alphabet. And part of the transition was so they could drop their whole "don't be evil" slogan. And since then, Google's willingness to collaborate with whoever, even competitors, in order to make some money and keep their competitors away, it's very consistent, at least. And I'm sure that Google offered the $1 billion deal here to prevent Anthropic and OpenAI from getting it. If we were to view this by who considers who their competitors, let's just put all the names here. If we were to think about this as a who competes with who thing, the classic, most well-known rivalry in all of tech history was Microsoft versus Apple. Remember the good old Mac versus PC commercials? Yeah. Microsoft's no longer thinking about Apple as their competitor. Microsoft and Google are neck and neck, battling constantly. It is very rare these two companies get along for any amount of time for any real reasons. They don't like each other right now, especially. Arguably, Amazon fits somewhere in here, but Amazon's kind of like so deep on their own plane that everybody's kind of given up competing with them. Amazon and Google were fighting back and forth for a while, but now they just kind of feel like they're in their own worlds. I still remember the days where Amazon blocked Google from selling Chromecasts because they saw it as competitive with Fire TV, which, in my opinion, probably should have been a lawsuit. Oh, God. Good old anti-competitive Amazon. But the one company here that is thinking the most about this, but also cares the least, is Google. And they kind of view every single one of these companies as competitors. So what do we do about that? You rank them. So if we have all these companies that Google thinks they're competing with at any given time, how do they think about where they rank? I would argue that up until recently, Meta was their biggest competitor, because Google makes their money on ads, Meta makes their money on ads. These are the two companies with the biggest and most successful ad networks in all of history. They are battling constantly for that. So where do the rest fit relative to Meta? OpenAI is a very interesting one. I would say OpenAI and Meta are probably on similar levels for Google. They're not as immediately detractive to the way Google makes money, but they're absolutely detractive to Google's long-term, like Google.com, Google AI models, Google infrastructure, all those things. But I would argue right now they're slightly below, which obviously means Anthropic is far below. Amazon is a weird one now. I'd put Amazon... where would I put Amazon? How does Google think about Amazon right now? I honestly don't know. These two just don't seem to think about each other a whole lot anymore. So I'll put Amazon relatively low, slightly above Anthropic. Google acts like Anthropic's real competition, so I'll put Anthropic higher. I say Amazon isn't because I've used Google Cloud. Google's not treating Amazon competition seriously. Microsoft, however, is a fun one. Google and Microsoft are definitely thinking way too much about each other right now. I'd say Microsoft is seen as a slightly higher competitor. But now, where does Apple go? Bottom of the list. Google doesn't really have any reason Apple winning hurts them. Apple being more successful doesn't really hurt Google because iPhone users make Google more money than Android users do. Apple's success does not really detract from Google in any way that they care about right now. So they're happy to partner. But when Google looks at the rest of the companies in this list, they're a lot more scared of them. In particular, with the AI stuff, these three in the middle here, Meta, OpenAI, and Anthropic. And if Google can eat some cost with some model training, a thing they're already really good at, and they can make a fine tune for Apple, hand them the weights, and reduce the likelihood that Meta, OpenAI, or Anthropic get any benefit from iPhone users, they're happy to do that. Ooh, what do you have here for Amazon? Very interesting. I might take back what I just said about Amazon not really thinking about competitors. Apparently they just sent a legal threat to Perplexity because their AI browser, similar to the one OpenAI just released, theirs is called Comet. Apparently Comet can be used on Amazon, and they don't like that, and they are now hitting them up. There's a blog post, Bullying is Not Innovation, on the Perplexity blog. Very interesting stuff. I'll be looking into that more later. So, yeah. Google working with Apple makes it less likely these three companies in the middle here can win Apple as a customer. They're willing to eat the cost and also give the weights to Apple, which is a thing I'm sure Apple wants. They don't want to have Google receiving the inputs and outputs from their users. Apple just does not operate that way. Fun fact that not many know. This is getting in a weird tangent. I'm so sorry, but once we're in the Google Apple stuff, I can't help myself. This is a particular special interest of mine. There is a protocol called RCS. It's a rich text format for sending text messages, an alternative to SMS. Google has historically been a big proponent of RCS because Google wants texts to be better, so they have an actual way to compete with iMessage. Apple seems to be a detractor of RCS because they want blue bubbles. They want iOS messaging to be best with iMessage and to make the Android users feel bad. That's at least what we're told to think. And eventually, Apple was forced by the courts to support RCS. Kind of. There's an interesting catch with RCS. RCS stands for Rich Communication. I'll type it first. RCS stands for Rich Communication Services. It's an open standard that anyone can choose to support. There is something missing from the standard, though. It does not include encryption. The RCS standard is an unencrypted standard, which means any texts you send through RCS were unencrypted. Google doesn't want its users sending unencrypted messages through whatever layers of different ISPs, CDNs, sketchy routers with hacks and things like that on it. So what did Google do? Google added encryption to RCS, exclusively through Google servers. The only way you could encrypt an RCS message was to first send the unencrypted one to Google, who would send you back the encrypted payload that you could then send to the user of your choice. So if Apple wanted encryption for RCS, Apple would have to send every one of your texts to Google first. Apple did not want that, so they did what they usually do. They quietly updated the standard, made an open standard for RCS encryption, speedrun the process of getting it adopted, and then made an actual encryption standard for RCS that now works and is shipped and is how Apple can do safe texting through RCS. So the public opinion is Apple is evil and terrible for not supporting the open standard. Meanwhile, Google's literally ingesting as much unencrypted data as possible because it's Google, that's what they love, and Apple went and made the actual encrypted standard. Don't believe everything you read on Twitter, boys. Anyways, Google and Apple have a weird history of supporting each other and standards and fighting and optics and all of that shit. But I don't think they care as much nowadays. I honestly don't think Google and Apple see each other as competitors the same way they used to, especially right now. That said, I don't think Apple wants to send a bunch of their users' data over to Google for no good reason. This is why Apple wants to have the model itself, the weights that it can run on their own servers, especially because they can go spend a ton of money on servers and don't care. They can use them for a lot of different things. Once you have a lot of GPUs, you can render a lot of Minecraft and also run a lot of AI models. I also happen to know some weird things about Google models, in particular that a lot of them are run on CPUs, which is fun. So I would imagine that there's enough overlap between Google and Apple's current state of infrastructure that this partnership makes even more sense. So, there is one remaining question. Once Apple has these models and has users sending things to them, are they going to collect that data? Are they going to use this in order to make up the data gap that currently exists between Apple and all of their competitors? Apple doesn't have enough data to train their own models right now, but if they get a good one from Google and they collect all of the inputs and outputs that users do, that should give them enough data to make something decent. Maybe something decent enough and small enough that it could reasonably run on your phone, because that is Apple's goal in the end. They want to have edge compute for AI. The most powerful computer the average American owns is their iPhone. It's more powerful than most of the computers that most people have, because they upgrade their computers every 4 to 6 years. They upgrade their phone every 3 to 4. And the phones are also just so far ahead, especially pre-Apple Silicon. There are so many powerful computers in people's pockets that just aren't quite powerful enough to run these big models. But if we can squeeze the right behaviors into a small enough model, the quality of experience we could provide at the edge like that is really promising. And no one's delivered on this promise just yet. The models that Apple's buying from Google here is for their cloud, so they can run it on their end so that users can get better results when they let Siri go phone home quick and send a response. But Apple's also done some interesting things around how that data gets passed. Last year, Apple announced some of the research they were doing in security for private cloud compute. The idea being that they could encrypt something in a way that allows for an LLM to generate a response without knowing. Excuse me, one more try it there. The concept of private cloud compute is a way to, like, at a system level, encrypt packets that are being passed around so that you can still generate a response without actually knowing the contents of the message. It's kind of crazy. I don't know how far along this stuff has gotten, but I know there was a lot of collaboration between Apple and other manufacturers of actual CPUs and with ARM and whatnot to try and find a way to do proper private cloud computing so a user could send data up to Apple's cloud and have it generate a good response without Apple ever actually knowing the contents of either the message or the response. Yeah. This stuff's all in an early research phase. Apparently, this code went public 5 days ago, which is suspicious around the way these things are aligned. Yeah, the first push here was in 2024 in October, so over a year ago. Then they did one 2025 4/11. What changed here? It's like a very general update. Of course, all their examples are in Swift. Quite a language. And then they just pushed another change a weekish ago. Very interesting. Very interesting. There's a lot of files in this one. Seems like Apple's going really hard on the private cloud compute stuff right now. Interesting timing when you consider the recent news that we're covering. Seems like there's something going on here. Also, fun internal things. Apple's had so many problems with the Siri team and the AI ML teams that internally the AI ML team has been branded as AI ML less, aimless. Funny pun. Yeah, the AI stuff at Apple has been getting a lot of shit internally, so much so that a new person was just put in charge of Siri internally, Mike Rockwell. What does he do again? What's his history? Oh, yeah, he was the guy who did the Vision Pro. Fun. How we know Mike Rockwell is the fixer that Siri's been missing. Siri's under new leadership at Apple, with Mike Rockwell taking over and taking on managerial responsibility under Craig Federighi's oversight. I still think Craig probably should have been the new CEO. We'll see how that all goes. Apparently, Rockwell hasn't been shy about criticizing Siri, according to people familiar with the matter. For years, he's pitched to the senior vice president on ideas for overhauling the voice system to make it more personalized. He's also been advising the AI group in recent weeks, even before the management changes, and Giandrea long considered Rockwell a potential successor. Yeah. Apparently, this came because he really wanted Siri to be a good way to control the Vision Pro, and he got more and more frustrated with it as they were developing the Vision Pro. Makes sense. Yeah. He's expressed disappointment in the demonstrations the Siri team created to showcase how the voice system could control Vision Pro. Yep. Makes sense. And hopefully, this, combined with this insane Google partnership, might result in Siri not sucking. They did call out in this article that Apple does still hope to develop its own large-scale model, which I suspect they will hopefully get some data from, or at the very least, now that they have so much money and a decent model, they can just throw a ton of compute at it and generate a shitload of artificial data to use for training their own things. Okay, this seems to confirm that Apple does intend to run the model on the private cloud compute structure, which explains why it's suddenly getting so many updates. Interesting. Yeah. It looks like they're going real hard on the private cloud compute thing. They might actually be the only private solution for doing cloud AI generation. They're very committed to the privacy thing. I am curious how they handle this going forward. This I kind of want to talk about. Yeah, I'm going to put this in the people keep using old models one. There. Thank you. Because that model would be shit. Oops. Okay. I think I've said all I have to say on this one. Google or Apple doesn't have a good model. None of the open models are good enough for them. Google is one of the few companies with a good enough model for them, and one of the only ones that would lower the price arbitrarily enough because they don't really see Apple as a competitor. I also suspect Google doesn't trust Apple's abilities to use the model to train something better, smarter, or cheaper. And they also don't see them as a company that would ever sell this model separately. Google and Apple's weird historical rivalry and partnership makes this a weird match that kind of works, and I suspect is also going to be a lever they can hold against other companies like Anthropic and OpenAI as they try to come up with their long-term vision for how they're going to deal with AI. Wild partnership. Never thought I'd see the day that Apple's buying Google's model so they can run it on their own private servers, but nothing makes sense anymore, so here we are. What do you guys think? Is this a cool, smart move by Apple, or is this them admitting defeat? Let me know what you think, and until next time, peace, nerds. Fun. Let me thank all the people I missed when I was filming. We got XCSS with the 8 months. Appreciate that. Benji Mac 93 with the 5 months of Prime. Thank you so much. Alembic here with the 3 months. Thank you. Blue Guy with 21 months of Prime. Fucking legend. Always Staples with the Prime. Thank you so much. And Kirk 92 with the 8 months. They've not tried the LM powered Alexa, and I'm probably not going to be big on that. Nice. Hmm. This actually looks really interesting. I'm going to go deep on this later. Thank you for the link. Is this the type? Oh, I've not seen this. This is a really fun article. Good shit. Thanks for sharing that. LinkedIn and Discord. I haven't checked Discord like at all. I am sure that Google's 1.2 trillion parameter model that's custom tuned to Apple's needs will massively outperform the open source options. I don't think AI or that Apple's AI stuff will affect T3 chat in any meaningful way. Oh, did Mir share useful things? My bad. Let me double check Discord quick. Oh, Mir said in it, you have to cover this. Good shit. Oh yeah, and I saw Stu did a new post. Also was very generous with gifts earlier. MacBook M4 on Amazon for $750 is a really good deal. Okay. Very good stuff. Very good start. We are an hour and 20 minutes in and we have one video. I thought that was going to be a short video. I legitimately did. I was like, oh, this is going to be so easy to do in 20 minutes. Nope. Sorry, so many notifications. All things I need to deal with later. That's fine. We can film. Okay. I think I'm going to go straight to the Anthropic Claude one. If anybody has other good posts about the Trey stuff, definitely throw those my way. Interesting. Another great Bobe post. I'll read that later for sure. Sorry. Anybody have links about this? Yeah, I'm definitely sitting. I don't stand at my desk. Is there really not more data on the tray thing? That's annoying. Or like more posts about it. Mm-hmm. Cool. I can work with this. I think I have everything I need for this one. Doesn't seem like their subreddit's particularly popular, to be fair. Let's dive into this one. I think I have enough. Let's do it. Okay. Do you remember Trey AI? Remember Trey, the AI IDE focused on being a better... I don't want to explain it. Remember Trey, the AI IDE similar to Cursor and... Similar to Cursor Windsurf. Okay, cool. Remember Trey, the AI IDE similar to Cursor and Windsurf, the VS Code fork by our friends over at TikTok and ByteDance, the one that was way cheaper than everything else? They've quietly been grinding, making the product better and better, going as far as coming to my apartment and sitting with me as I roast all the little things wrong with it. It's a team that really cares. Trey is a pretty cool AI ID, and I've been pumped to see the work that they're doing. And it seems like some other people were not quite as pumped. As of yesterday, Anthropic has hard cut off Trey's access to Claude models, which is kind of crazy because they've been using the Claude models for a lot of the new agentic stuff that they've been doing, especially the solo mode. Really felt like it was built around Claude and its behaviors and characteristics and abilities. This is far from the first time Anthropic has done this. They previously cut off Windsurf. Because, according to Dario, it would be odd for us to sell Claude to OpenAI, which he doubled down on by cutting off OpenAI's access to Claude, which, according to OpenAI, they were using for benchmarks, but according to Anthropic, they were using for getting data for training. Yeah, absolute mess. Anthropic has historically been pretty cut through. Anthropic's historically been pretty sensitive about these types of things. They're the only major lab I know of that is so strict about these cutoff things. In particular, it seems like they're restricting access beyond just Anthropic services because Anthropic models are accessible through Google through the Vertex program, or retake on that bit. It seems like Anthropic is much, or how do I want to explain this? Not only is Anthropic the only company that cuts off, not only is Anthropic the only major lab that will cut people off in this way, they go way further with it, where Anthropic's models are provided on platforms like Google Cloud and AWS through Bedrock. They're not letting these customers access it through those either via their terms of service and agreements with those providers. There's a lot to dive into here from why Anthropic's being so sensitive to why it might actually make a lot of sense now, thanks to developments we've seen from both Windsurf and Cursor that are a lot scarier than Anthropic probably previously thought. Their edge seems to be waning, and their fear is at an all-time high, and the result is weird, questionable decisions like cutting one of their biggest advocates in Trey, and one of their biggest customers probably too, off of Anthropic models entirely. I'm not paid by any of these parties. I am an investor in Cursor, but none of the other things I'm talking about here. So let's do a quick word from today's sponsor. Do you know who is paying me, though? Today's sponsor. Cool. So, why is Anthropic being... I want to open this. I'll start here. So why is Anthropic so uniquely sensitive, such that they cut off Windsurf, they cut off OpenAI directly, and now they're cutting off Trey? What do these companies have in common? What is it that Anthropic is so sensitive about? And in particular, why is Cursor different? Why is it that Cursor is not getting this weird treatment that the others are? I think the reason is very specific, and it's a weird thing that these two companies have in common. Anthropic is scared of these two more than the others. I think the reason that they hate OpenAI so much is pretty obvious and apparent. Anthropic came as a result of employees at OpenAI quitting and building their own alternative model company that has went way better than anyone expected. Anthropic is killing it, to be frank. And Trey is a very different reason. There is overlap to that reason, though. Trey is happening because of this report that they put out September 4th of this year, updating restrictions of sales to unsupported regions. Anthropic's terms of service prohibit use of our services in certain regions due to legal, regulatory, and security risks. However, companies from these restricted regions, including adversarial nations like China, continue accessing our services in various ways, such as through subsidiaries incorporated in other countries. It is my understanding that there are parts of ByteDance and TikTok that are incorporated here. That's why they have an office for Trey in my city, San Francisco. This is also why I can hang out with people who work on Trey. I've hung out with the whole team at this point. They're great devs. They care a lot. They feel as American as any other team that I work with, but the company that owns them is Chinese. And the subsidiary in the US has allowed them to have access to Claude. And it seems like Anthropic is now not allowing such a thing to happen. Companies subject to control from authoritarian regimes like China face legal requirements that can compel them to share data, cooperate with intelligence services, or take other actions that create national security risks. These requirements make it difficult for companies to resist the pressures regardless of where they operate from or the personal preferences of the individuals at the company. When these entities access our services through subsidiaries, they could use our capabilities to develop applications and services that ultimately serve adversarial military and intelligence services and broader authoritarian objectives. They could also potentially use our models to advance their own AI development through techniques like distillation and to compete globally with trusted technology companies headquartered in the US and allied countries. This is a lot of words. The thing they actually care about is right here. Use our models to advance their own AI development through techniques like distillation. Yeah. Anthropic doesn't want open weight models to come back and compete with them, especially from China. This fear seems a little overplayed until you realize something important. Hear me out on this one. Apparently Windsurf is a weird corrupted icon right now for me. That's funny. I was playing with Windsurf a bunch recently because I wanted to try out their new model, SWE 1.5, which is their super fast, up to like 2000 TPS model that they trained on data from users using Windsurf and are hosting on the really fast platform. What's it called? What's the host because of the C? The fast one, the alternative to Grok with the Q. Cerebras, yeah. It's hosted on Cerebras because they have really fast infra for this type of inference, and Cerebras loves doing these types of weird partnerships. The reason I'm here is a bit different. I was using this to try and upgrade my Snitchbench benchmark to use the latest version of the AI SDK. It's one of my favorite tests to run on new models, new applications, new background agent tools, all these types of things. So I tried it. And it runs really fast. I was impressed with how fast and surprisingly decent the model was. But I noticed something particular here. After I went through all of this, and it screwed some things up. And I told it that. I don't think you are persisting tool calls correctly. This is what they should look like in logs. You're right. Huh. Also earlier, or later on, I said, it seems like the problem is all of the types we created. Can we do this without so many custom types? The types in the AI SDK v5 are much better and should be usable directly. Read the docs if you need to. You're absolutely right. That sound familiar? This model has Claude Brain. It has Claude Brain after being hit with a few hammers and squeezed into a much faster shape. But this model has a very bad case of Claude Brain. It's hard to describe, but it has a specific vibe with it and how it does things that is so Claude-y, like, let me simplify this by using, or perfect, now I can see the exact types. Like this is Claude. Other models do this some amount as well, like apparently Grok 4 Fast will match these patterns. I would suspect the majority that are doing this are doing it because they're trained on data that was created by Claude, because Claude 3.5 Sonnet was the first model good enough to do these types of things. Yeah. I don't think this is, or I don't have official confirmation on this, but it seems relatively obvious that the SWE 1.5 model by Windsurf was trained on what Anthropic models have been doing in their IDE. My honest guess is that they've collected a certain amount of data from people who are using Claude models in Windsurf and used that to do a refined version of what's probably an open weight model to make it this fast and good for code gen for this use case. I suspect that Cursor has done the same thing with their recent Composer 1 model. It feels a bit more different than the others do, But it's very clear that the thing that Windsurf and Cursor now have that allows them to do this is insane amounts of data of a user making a request in a giant code base and a result coming out and a thumbs up or down on whether or not the user liked the result and what they then went and changed. That is super valuable data, and it's not surprising to me at all that they're using this data to train new models, and the result is these fast models that are not quite as smart, but are surprisingly good. Another good point is that there's a lot of companies that sell data to these labs, and most of these data labeling companies are also going to use Anthropic models for labeling their data, which results in similar behavior. Makes sense. I would be very, very surprised if any of these labs were training on data that didn't have Claude involved in it somewhere, which definitely results in the flavoring that we're seeing. So around the same time that this post came out by Anthropic saying that they're going to be more restrictive on how companies that have Chinese ownership access their models, I'm guessing that was around the same time that Windsurf and Cursor had started really diving into training their own models on the data that they had, and that made Anthropic scared. Anthropic doesn't want the insane amount of money, effort, research, time, and every other measurable thing that they've done, that they've put into these models, to be distilled out and thrown at other much cheaper things. And they're going to start fighting about this significantly harder. Some things that are worth knowing about Anthropic is that they're the only major lab that has 0 open weight models. None. Only lab I know of in like the current times that doesn't have any open weight anything that has been released. Google has Gemma, OpenAI has Whisper, and now the GPT OSS models. Llama's always been open source. Anthropic has not contributed meaningfully to open weight models. They're also the only major CLI with source not available. There's a lot of people who seem to think that Claude Code is open source because there's a Claude Code repo on GitHub. And this repo on GitHub even has a license, which is Anthropic PBZ all rights reserved, huh? What about the code? Oh, I don't see any real code here. I see plugins and scripts. That's because Claude Code doesn't actually have the Claude Code source in this repo. This is for random community stuff like tracking issues, which they now have 5,000 of. They did not open source Claude Code. The code for Claude Code is not in this repo. And I feel like they get away with this, and a lot of people think Claude Code is open source because this repo is really popular. This is probably the biggest repo on GitHub, 41.5k stars, that isn't an actual repo with actual fucking code in it. It's kind of insane. Anthropic just gets away with being loved by developers because they were the first to serve developers at all. And now they just get away with it. Yeah. So the only one that has 0 open weight models, the only one that has a CLI with the source not available, and they're also the only one that actively publishes research and benchmarks without releasing the majority of those benchmarks. Like they have a couple times. Like I'm really thankful they put out agentic misalignment bench. In particular, I'm thankful for that because they lied when they were talking about how OpenAI models performed on it by saying OpenAI's reasoning models don't understand the benchmark. And then when 4.5 Sonnet had the same problem, they said that the model was now smarter than the benchmark and realized it was being tested. When in reality, OpenAI models noticed that earlier, and even when they didn't, they scored a 0% murder rate on the murder bench that Opus scored over 60% on. Yeah. Anthropic has tried positioning themselves as the safety-focused OpenAI company that OpenAI pretends to be, and I wish they would hold themselves to that. I genuinely do. Because right now, it feels like their excuses are being written by Claude. Very real. Very, very real. Yeah. And now, as they look at companies like Trey, which have way more funding than either Cursor or Windsurf do, they're a real threat. Windsurf was not a threat when they were separate in their own company with a little bit of funding and a lot of weird UI problems to solve. OpenAI was a real threat because they have more money than Anthropic. Trey's a real threat because they have real money and they're in China. Cursor wasn't seen as much of as a threat, and at this point, if Anthropic was to pull Claude models from Cursor, I think that would be the point where we all start to riot. It seems as though Anthropic is being really strategic here about how much can they take away without the average developer being mad at them, because they're really relying on the average dev thinking of them as a good, positive company trying to push the state of the art forward. Even though they hold a lot back from us, they seem to kind of look down on us as developers. I have lots of weird experiences with them that feel that way. And just talking internally with friends who have been around the space, it seems like Anthropic doesn't want to even have an API platform because those are GPUs they can't use for doing their own data and from the little I've heard, it seems like Anthropic employees don't even want to have an API because the API needs GPUs that they could be using for the things they want to do internally. Yeah, interesting. For better or worse, I still think Anthropic has the most pleasant to use models for doing these big agentic things, especially background tasks, because their models are way faster and good at handling large amounts of tool calls constantly going on. And a lot of these tools are built to handle that. Like when I was playing with Trey's solo mode, I asked it to list all of the tools it has access to. And there's a lot of them. It has a run agent solo document, run agent solo coding, solo dev builder, search code, search by regex, view files, view folder. It has a ton of tools. It has a ton of tools. And then when it runs the agent solo coding tool, that one has even more of them. Yeah, it's a lot. They built these tools around the quirks and behaviors that Cursor, and they built these tools around the quirks, behaviors, and things they observed Claude doing. And now Claude isn't even an option, which sucks. If you want to bring your own API key, you still can. That's cool. And I'm assuming that those requests are hopefully, fingers crossed, routed from your machine directly to OpenAI or Anthropic's APIs. Not positive about that, but yeah. Hard to know for sure. This is scary. I don't like the idea of Anthropic not letting specific businesses use their models because they don't like them. And I'm relatively consistent with this. I hated back in the day when Amazon banned Google from selling things like I hated when Google got banned from Amazon for selling Chromecasts because Amazon saw them as a competitor and didn't want easy access to Chromecast when they could be selling Fire TV. I don't like that Apple was restricting other payment things from being available on iOS when you download apps, depending on what industry category you're in if Apple intends to compete someday. I don't like when businesses arbitrarily restrict access to their services based on the potential fear of competitors having a win from it. In this case, there's the angle of China bad and scary, and I understand that angle. I absolutely do. I'm more sympathetic here than I am most of the time, but this is a pattern from Anthropic. They wait till something is far enough along that it's now a concern, but not quite far enough that cutting it will hurt their image. They wait until they can cut and hurt the competitor and not themselves. Like when they did the OpenAI cut, that was right around when GPT-5 was coming out, which meant it got destroyed in the news cycle. No one even cared. In fact, the writer who wrote the article we had pulled up here for The Wired, Kylie Robinson, got fired from working at The Wired. That's how little The Wired cared, or that's how little Wired cared about this story and how little traffic this got. People don't care right now, and I know a lot of the subtle reasons why. In fact, I'm sure if you scroll down and read this comment section, it's a bunch of people saying, why does Theo have such a hate boner for Anthropic? Why is Theo so mean to Anthropic? It must be OpenAI paying him. I'll tell you from firsthand experience, OpenAI is kinder to Anthropic than I am. I am the hater, not them. Don't assume that I'm being paid to hate on this company when it could just be organic hatred. I just do not like how well they've positioned themselves where they're seen as the good guy when they're not doing good things. And you can even see this on Twitter from people complaining, saying that this is like windsurf. And you even see this on Twitter when you look at the people who are complaining, saying that this is Trey's fault. Switching from Trey after their drop of Anthropic models. Every coder knows Claude is miles ahead. Just cancel my subscription. I bought it. Damn it. I bought a year's Trey membership and now they're telling me Claude can't be used. Byte's move is really too scammy. No, Anthropic. Why, Trey? Why? 80% of my reason to buy a year subscription was Claude models. Will you give me an 80% refund then? At Trey, why did you remove Claude? GPT-5 sucks. Just saw an Anthropic employee. Just saw a poor Anthropic employee trying to do just saw a poor Anthropic employee trying to do damage control in my replies when I talked about this, claiming that this is just the supported region thing. Every other major ID has access to Claude. Windsurf has access because the OpenAI deal didn't go through and they got bought by Devin instead. And Anthropic has a big partnership with Devin they don't want to lose. Cursor, I wouldn't be surprised if they're cut off. Also, notice he put Windsurf first here, even though it's the least popular of these options. He knows what he's doing here. He knows that they were cut off, and they reversed the cutoff when they realized that OpenAI wouldn't be making the acquisition. And also, by technicality, OpenAI doesn't have an IDE, and if they did, you know Anthropic wouldn't let them because they've revoked the access already. Yeah. It kind of sucks that they keep getting away with this, and I will continue taking the PR hit whenever I bitch about Anthropic models and Anthropic's business practices, because I don't want this to keep happening. If Anthropic's going to be seen by developers as the good AI company, I really hope they start acting like it. For everything, or for every good thing they do, like MCP, which we could even argue about the goodness of, they're the only company that's doing some other weird, sketchy shit. And we need to hold them accountable for this. We can't let Anthropic keep getting away with fucking over the progress of the rest of the industry because we think that their models are really good at code sometimes. And I do honestly suspect they're going to start pushing their relationships and the limits of them with companies like Cursor and now Windsurf and Devin. The leopards will never eat my face. Let's hope this one doesn't get us cut off with T3 chat. But if it does, no, I'm sorry, and that I did it for the right reasons. Let me know what you guys think. Am I overreacting, or is Anthropic not deserving of the positivity they currently have? Let me know, and until next time, peace, nerds. It is my understanding that they thought there were other ways around this with things like Bedrock and Vertex on Google Cloud, and didn't happen. The only company that could justify buying Anthropic just due to the cost would be Apple. Yeah, I know he hates China. I've seen that a lot. Why would they only do this for coding tools? Because their only edge is coding. And they don't see NVIDIA as a competitor because NVIDIA makes way more money selling GPUs than they'll ever make selling models or inference. NVIDIA briefly had their own inference that was useless because you couldn't pay for it, and it had really strict restrictions on like how much like throughput you could do on it. I had a lot of people mad at me for not opening up, or I had a lot of people mad at us early with T3 chat for not offering DeepSeek hosted on NVIDIA because we would be able to serve one user with it before we hit rate limits. Yeah, so they just don't see NVIDIA as a competitor, and they also know if they were to cut off NVIDIA's access to their models, NVIDIA would cut off their access to GPUs. So, yeah. China's nanoseconds behind America in AI. It's vital that America wins by racing ahead and winning developers worldwide. Yep. That sounds like a thing I agree with. Not the fucking TPUs in space. That shit's so annoying. Comment previous on Apple and Google. Google made Pixel the best showcase for AI features. Yeah. Historically, the role of Pixel, and prior to that, the role of the Nexus line, was Google trying to raise the bar for the quality of experience that Android could offer to try and make Android phones less shitty, but also to incentivize them to make better stuff. I was a Nexus diehard back in the day. All my phones were Nexus phones for a while. Used Unity OS 8 billion as a replacement for Claude Code during a flight and it sucked hard. Yep. Anthropic would be a much more expensive purchase than Gemini models are. And it also lets if they buy Anthropic, they kind of have to fire their internal AI team. If they buy a model from Google, they can use that to bolster their internal AI team. This is a good question. I have not seen this. Do you have a link to this, AI Code King? I'll probably add that into the video if so. This is a video I have that I'm going to do in a bit, Chesk. Best alternative to what? I'm talking about a lot of things. Thank you, JDJB78 for the Prime, Harry Saturn for the Prime, and Witness was here for the Prime. SW bench. Ah. This makes a lot of sense, actually. Good call out. Yeah, thank you, AI Code King. That's for Anthropic Travid. Phase, sneak this in somewhere where it makes sense, probably in the section where I'm talking about them being scared of models being trained on output data. Good friend of the channel, AI Code King, just showed up. If you're not already watching his videos, you should be. His shit's really good. He dropped this very fun bit of information I was not aware of, which is that ByteDance's seed model through Trey is currently crushing not on Terminal Bench, but SWE Bench. This is the highest current score on SWE Bench verified. Trey and Dubao seed code got a 78% as of about 2 months ago, a month and a half-ish, around the same time that this updated restrictions page was published, earlier in the same month. Seems like there's some salt going on here, that Anthropic is scared of what's going on with these models that they almost certainly suspect, at least, are being trained using the data that was collected from users using Claude. The seed coder model is titled "Let the Code Model Curate Data for Itself." It's a family of lightweight yet powerful open source code LLMs comprising base, instruct, and reasoning models, all of 8 billion size. Seed Coder demonstrates that with minimal human effort, LLMs can effectively curate code training data by themselves to drastically enhance coding capabilities. So this is a model trained on code data that was curated by another model, and the results are that it's crushing in benchmarks and making Anthropic very sensitive. This makes so much sense. The mini SWE agent plus 4.5 Sonnet was able to get a 70 versus the 78.8 that was just scored by Trey plus Dubao. Maybe I shouldn't be so hard on them for having too many tools if they're able to score that high on things like this. Very interesting. This also looks very interesting. I'll play with that more. I did not realize that OpenDevin was still doing that well. Good shit. Thank you again, AI Code King. Very useful. Yep, it's almost certainly data from Trey. I hope that was clear in that cut. I don't want to re-record it. Good shit. It was particularly funny because like so much of the like improvement in reasoning is because of the Chinese company DeepSeek open publishing everything they did with the work with DeepSeek R1. Like R1 is what made reasoning become the thing every model does. So it's funny that they took this thing OpenAI did and didn't put out enough info about, figured it all out for us as an industry. And now they just quietly research other cool things. Like the Anthropic or DeepSeek's not trying to put out this crazy model right now. They're trying to just advance the science. It's really interesting. I'm curious what their long-term goals are still. Sorry, I had to blow my nose quick. Let me also turn on the fans for the AC so I can get some cold air in here. Anyways, I promised the PewDiePie stuff. We should do this now. Let's start it. let's just go straight to it. FaZe, go have fun with this intro, like showing the thumbnail here and everything. So there's this small indie. Okay. There's a small indie YouTuber you might have heard of before called PewDiePie. And recently he's transitioned from making videos about video games and other chaos to making videos about AI and technology. And they've actually been really interesting. He recently did a video titled Stop Using AI Right Now. And despite what you might expect, I found myself agreeing with him in the vast majority of this video. I'm genuinely impressed with the work he is doing, from building his own machines to run LLMs locally on multiple GPUs. From building a machine with like 8 GPUs to run models locally, to building his own open source T3 chat competitor. Yes, he built his own open source competitor to my service. It's kind of wild, but actually genuinely cool. And there's a lot of takes in this video that I want to break down a bit further and give a bit of a like support push from my side as a developer. I'm scared that the nuance of his takes here is going to be missed, both because he's not a tech person, he is like a famous YouTuber, but also because he makes it very personal. He talks about how he feels about things and the way he's using them in a way I think can be learned from and generalized much more. I'm really excited to dive deep into all the fun things PewDiePie said, but unlike him, I can't afford I'm really excited to dive into all the fun things he said and try to break them down more. But unlike PewDiePie, I don't have the money around to buy 10 4090s. So we're going to have a quick word from today's sponsor first. So rough idea for format for this phase for the edit. I'm going to play a lot more of the video now live than I want in the final cut. I mostly just want like these key points he makes, and then I go Excalibur out like how to apply them other ways. But I have to find them, and I was not smart enough to put the timestamps for the key pieces that I wanted here.
I have a confession to make. I bifurcated again. And I know what you're thinking. Felix, did you split your PCIe lanes? You can
We can skip all this bit.
As many times as I want. Just. I can. I had to do it, man. Surely you will understand. Now I know what you're thinking. Again, Felix, what are you gonna do with all of that? 6 dimensions. I am going to play. And maybe you can relate to this as well, of setting a goal without any my computer, and that became like a weird obsession. Felix, did you add a 4090? Do that. I can undervolt it. It's fun. Doing protein, that's for it. Basically, scientists needs to run these protein.
Okay, I need to find the first part about AI art. There a transcript. Okay, here we are. So the first chunk of this video is him building this insane machine and also plugging protein folding, which I think is a really cool thing to plug. If you're not familiar, one of the cool things you can do with GPUs that isn't AI is donating compute to companies and mostly charities that are trying to learn more about proteins and health research by running these really complex mathematical things. And you can just let your computer run that stuff overnight with programs like Folding at Home, which lets you use your GPUs to hopefully potentially advance science instead of mining Bitcoin or some shit. Really cool stuff. But that's just like the fun intro talking about all of the utter chaos that he's engaging in and one of the things he's using his 8 4090s for. But after that and his ad break from, what was the company? Want to plug them on his behalf. Sally, which is an eSIM company for people who travel the world a lot. Check out the description in his video if you want to learn more about that. I want to talk here about AI stuff, though. That's what we're all here for.
If you have this many GPUs, you at least gotta try running AI on it. And I'm not gonna lie, it became my next big, I have to max out. What's the biggest model of AI that I can run on this computer? That's what I wanted to find out. And it turns out it's complicated. You know, this computer costs $20,000 roughly. In terms of running AI, that's relatively cheap. That's what I was trying to say. Because the cost for running AI is like, I can't, it goes from here to, no, I can't make that joke. The cost for running AI is just bonkers.
I don't think people understand the depth of this take, and as like gentle as he is with it, the absolute chaos of how these prices ramp is insane. AI Code King's in chat, which is very useful. Thanks again for stopping by, man. Just for context, it's about 6 times, or he's running about 6x RTX 4000s and about 2x RTX 4090Ds, which is China modded for 48 gigs of VRAM GPUs. This is another one of like the real fun things that people do now. Since VRAM quickly becomes a bottleneck for running AI with a GPU, because you need to have all the parameters in memory for it to run efficiently, the amount of memory you have can matter a lot more than the amount of power you have, which is kind of insane if you just think about it. But the more you dive in, the more you realize it's very real. The A100 by NVIDIA is their like Tensor GPU. It has 80 gigs of RAM. This is one of the like cheaper options for a Tensor core for doing accelerated GPU stuff. And this GPU alone goes for $20,000. So if you were to compare this to an, I don't know, RTX 5090, which has way less VRAM, it's 32 gigs instead of 80, and this card supposed to MSRP at like 2 to 2.5K, they go for 3K. How much more powerful do you think the A100 is than the 5090? Fuck. So you would imagine with this price gap and the huge gap of VRAM, 80 gigs versus 32 gigs of VRAM, you would expect the A100 to be way faster and more powerful. And if you're measuring this by how big of a model these can run, the A100 can run bigger models much better because it can fit over twice the amount of stuff in VRAM. But the thing that blew me away that I never would have guessed until I was experimenting with this myself, because I run AI stuff on my 5090 personally, and I was playing with an A100 in the cloud. The 5090 is faster. I never would have guessed that. The 5090 crushes the A100. Because the A100 is costing this much money almost entirely because of the VRAM, not because of the actual performance the chip gets. VRAM is not a good measurement for how powerful a graphics chip is. It is just a measurement for how much shit it can hold. That's what RAM is. Putting more RAM in a computer doesn't make it faster. Putting more RAM in a GPU doesn't make it faster. It increases the ceiling for how much you can put in it at once before you have to leave memory and hit other storage, which is way slower. If you can't fit, or if you have a 70 gig model, you can fit that on an A100. You can't fit it on a 5090, which means that you're not going to use the 5090 to its full speed. And now you have to wait for it to go hit your actual storage and get it off of a drive. This is also why there's an underrated GOAT for using large models. There is an actual computer that you can buy from a major company that is way cheaper than what our friend PewDiePie just did, that can run much, much bigger models surprisingly well. The Mac Studio. There's a lot of people who are very mad at Apple for daring to make a computer that doesn't have upgradable RAM. There's a very big reason for this, though. The 96 gigs of RAM on this M3 Ultra model isn't 96 gigs of RAM for the CPU. It's 96 gigs of unified memory. It's on the chip, the one chip that has the CPU and GPU and their equivalent of tensor cores all on the same chip, which means you can use all 96 gigs for a model. Or you can upgrade it to have 512 gigs of unified memory. This computer might seem disgustingly expensive at $9,500 because it is. That's a lot of money for a computer. But when you're comparing it to a GPU and the GPU costs 20 grand, it has less than a fifth as much memory. You see why a Mac Studio, if your goal is to have the biggest model at a reasonable speed rather than a reasonable model at a high speed, actually makes a ton of sense. You have to balance out these different pieces when you're speccing out a machine to run models. You have to have enough RAM to fit the model, but once you hit that amount of RAM, more RAM stops benefiting you. And then you want to have enough CPU or GPU or whatever you're running on, probably GPU power, to actually traverse all that data in memory and generate whatever you're trying to generate. And our friends over at NVIDIA take as much advantage of all of this as they possibly can. They arbitrarily restrict how much VRAM is on a lot of their GPUs because a fucking 3060 with a ton of RAM would be worth so much to a lot of people. So they don't do it. Instead, when they put more than 30 gigs of VRAM on something, they make it way more expensive and call it an enterprise GPU. This has resulted in a crazy underground market in China where people are modding the GPUs to add more RAM on older, cheaper, less well-supported GPUs so they can use them for crazy AI stuff. It's a very interesting space. And once again, AI Code King is dropping really useful knowledge here. The RTX Pro 6000 is one of the best values for money for any iGPU right now because it's as fast as the 5090, roughly. I've seen mixed reports on it, but it's close. And you get 96 gigs of VRAM, and it's only 9 grand. Only 9 grand. Fun. Yeah. All very useful info. And all of that said, PewDiePie here was comparing these crazy system prices, which makes sense because for the amount of compute he wanted, because he really wanted this to be fast and super capable, but didn't think quite enough initially about how much VRAM was necessary to run the things he wanted to run. Yeah, these prices might seem insane, but 20 grand for a basic AI system is on the low end for sure. I would still argue that something like the Mac Studio would probably make more sense in that range, but there's a lot of debate to be had here. It's actually a really interesting thing to think about when you're trying to spec out these machines. What was the other thing I wanted to show? Oh, yeah. I was just showing the A100 price. The H100 is a much more expensive GPU. This is the flagship to an extent. They don't list a price anywhere because they don't sell these to consumers. You buy these GPUs from NVIDIA as an enterprise, usually in bulk, but you can get them resale from companies like Asa here for around 30 grand, even though market price is like 44. Well, you can now get H200s for around the same 30 grand, but if you want a box with a bunch of them, like the DGX, $500,000. Yeah. This shit's intense. And these are the GPUs that our favorite models are all running on in the cloud. Like if you're using GPT-5, that's not going to run on a system with a bunch of 5090s. That needs way more RAM. These big models are big. They're hundreds of gigs. The B200 is apparently the best option right now, and those are $50,000 each. And an 8 GPU server is $500,000. A full NVL with this or a full NVL with these chips could be up to $3 million for one box. That's insane. And then there's the power costs too, because these GPUs are using so much power. One B200 can consume 1,200 watts of power. That's insane. Enough about that, because just wanted to go a little deeper on the cost profile of these things, because he literally had this on the screen for 5 seconds, and I think this deserved more time because gamers don't understand. Like, they see a 5090 for $3,000, they're like, that's way too expensive, and they don't understand how crazy this gets.
Stupid. Okay, so what AI did I run? First, we have to make some things crystal clear.
This is one of my favorite parts of the video, so I really want to hone in on this next piece. This is about different types of AI.
I do not F with image generation or video generation. I don't really have that strong of opinion about it, but all the drawing nerds supported me in my drawing video, so I stand by the drawing nerds, as a fellow drawing nerd myself. I genuinely think AI art looks ass. It looks bad. You can tell immediately it's AI generated. And the art that does look cool has been straight up ripped off from another artist. So why not just look up the artist? I don't get it. I can see it being used for the lowest stock image or piece of a background or something, but more than that, I just think it's lame. Second of all,
quick round of applause for PewDiePie for having a really good and based take about AI art. I agree with pretty much every single word he just said, and am going to do the thing I do where I take his words and go even further with them, because he was a little too kind to an extent here. The Oatmeal, which is one of my favorite comic strips, recently published his takes on AI art. And this is also full of bangers. When I consume art, it evokes a feeling. Good, bad, neutral, whatever. When I consume AI art, it also evokes a feeling. I like the example of the AI art here. It evokes a feeling until I find out that it's AI art. Then I feel deflated, grossed out, and maybe a little bit bored. Feelings out of choice. I'm not deciding to hate it. I'm not like, oh, here's something really good, but I'm choosing to hate it because it's a threat to my livelihood. It's because when you know it's not made by a human, that it wasn't made with emotion, and it feels worse. You don't feel the same when you watch a movie and say, hey, what the fuck? These dinosaurs aren't real. Part of it's the magic of thinking, how did someone make this? But more of it is that every detail was chosen. Like when you look at a piece of art and there's something in it, it was put there by a human. They might have put it there by accident. There might be an error in how they painted. But the art itself, every detail was decided or at least agreed upon by a human. When I AI generate an image, there is so much going on that I probably didn't decide on. It's very different, and the result feels very different too. There are uses for AI in media work. Like I use it for generating specific assets in my thumbnails sometimes. I use it for generating backgrounds sometimes. I use it for removing backgrounds quite often. There are things that AI is good for as they augment our work as creatives, the same way they augment our work as developers. When you use the AI to replace the work entirely, the result loses so much intent that it just doesn't feel right. And it sucks that so many of these AI media tools aren't trying to augment us as creatives to be more creative and more successful with our work. They'd much rather replace us entirely. And that sucks because we did not do the same thing for developers. We didn't start by promising to automate developers away with tools like Lovable. We started with the promise that we would make our developers more efficient by helping with things like autocomplete. Autocomplete was how most devs first experienced AI in their coding experiences, not as AI coming out and saying, hey, we're going to replace you, the way they do with these things. And that sucks. There's another thing that makes this suck a lot harder, though, and I think about this far too much and have been waiting for a video where I could really go in on this, and I am so thankful for PewDiePie, of all people, to let me do this. LLMs generate text. Diffusion models, or LLMs generate text. These media models are usually diffusion models. You can use diffusion models for other things. So I'll say diffusion models usually generate media. I want to talk about this a little different. I'm going to ask you guys a question. What percentage of generated text do you think gets read by a human? When these AI models that we all use for all sorts of things nowadays are generating text, what percentage of that text do you think ends up being read by a human in the end? Just drop your gut feels. You got a 1%, 10%, 30%, 10%, 40, 10, 10 to 15, 5, 1% if that. I'm going to be real with you guys. Fucking Christ, Windows. Let's add a random Defender summary. Cool. Seeing a couple numbers higher than I would ever guess. I would be really surprised if it was more than like 2%. But what would the use of this be if humans aren't reading it? Very simple. Text is useful for things other than being read by humans. When an LLM generates text, it's not necessarily generating paragraphs for a person to read. Sometimes it's generating tool calls for some other code to use to execute. Sometimes it's generating reasoning data that we don't even get to see. I would bet that a significant portion of OpenAI's text generation isn't even sent to people because the text being generated during the reasoning section doesn't get sent to us. It's sent in the form of a summary to us, but there is so much text data being generated by these models that we can't even access. It's just not effectively there at all. The majority of text being generated by LLMs is not being used by humans as a thing that they consume. The vast, vast majority of how LLMs are generating text and the text that they're generating is going towards doing other shit. Be it using it as context to make the model smarter when it responds, be it tool calls to get better results, be it code gen that no one's reading in the first place. The vast majority of the text data being generated by these LLMs is never actually consumed by a human. So why am I talking about this? What percent of generated images gets seen by a human? If the answer here isn't 100%, then it isn't working at all. There is no value to a generated image other than a person looking at the image. That's the point. Obviously. There is so much value to LLMs outside of generating a thing for a human that has made it worth investing in heavily, researching, building, and making this crazy business that's probably a bubble. I'm not going to say AI isn't a bubble. At the very least, LLMs have value outside of generating text for humans. But when they're generating images, they're generating video, they're generating music, those things are all only useful to humans. Those are not useful outside of the use of another human consuming them, or, God forbid, training another model with them. That's the only value of AI-generated images and other media types. AI-generated text can be used to automate things. AI-generated media can be used to take jobs. That's all it's good for. Straight up. And that sucks. That really sucks because there's so much money going into this thing that isn't useful outside of human consumption. LLMs can be used to generate slop, but they are useful outside of it. Image generators can't be used to do anything other than generate slop. I hate this fact. When this clicked for me, it made me so skeptical of so much shit. So much shit. Okay. Someone said it's not true. Barcodes, QR codes, those are made for machines, not humans. I dare you to try generating a QR code with an image model. Do it. Watch what happens. QR codes, barcodes, and all those things are generated programmatically with really, really simple algorithms. That's not an AI generating an image. That is a simple transformation. I think this is all pretty obvious and apparently true when you think about it. It's just a thing people haven't thought about much. Code and text to some extent is kind of logical. Images and video are not. That's why it's hard for even humans to do. Image gens can be used as a tool. I only use it like once in a month for a random asset. Yep, this is roughly exactly where I am, AI Code King. One of like 30 thumbnails might have some part that is AI generated because it's easier than going into DevTools and making a whole fake UI to have a fake conversation between Microsoft and Google or whatever. They are useful as tools within our creative process, but that's all these things are. The value of image gen is slop, memes, and some asset generation. The value of video gen is a shitty TikTok clone that nobody used after the first week, and they could no longer violate copyright. I don't think there's any use for AI music gen. It's just fucking bad. It's so bad. Every time I hear one of those like AI generated songs, I cringe so deeply. Yeah, I think the media gen stuff is the cringiest shit ever. I'll be much harsher on it than PewDiePie is for these reasons. I have less to lose by talking shit on it. I have less to lose by embracing the media stuff. Like if he does, he gets like axed from the entire YouTube community. If he was to say, I think video gen is cool, he'll never be respected by other YouTubers. I can say it and get away with it because I'm a tech bro, but I hate it more than him. So let that stand for what it is. I think all the media gen stuff is fucking cringe. Anyways.
I do feel like I'm in a weird place with this because I'm gonna yap about AI here, and I hate people yapping about AI. I genuinely can't stand it.
Okay. Back to his video, because point 2 he makes here is another thing I have strong feelings about.
First of all, I do feel like I'm in a weird place with this because I'm gonna yap about AI here, and I hate people yapping about AI. I genuinely can't stand it. Seeing AI everywhere is so irritating to me. I went to a hotel last month and they were like, we have AI generation integrated in the hotel room. I'm like, great, stop.
So based, so real. I have a confession to make based on this one, actually. You guys might have noticed that I just kind of went from an AI skeptic to arguably an AI channel, where it's a huge part of the things I talk about, the products I build, and a lot of the other things that happen that I'm associated with now. People think it's every video. It's not. I have plenty of videos still where I don't talk about AI stuff, but it's important, it's interesting to me, and I have a lot of opinions, and I want to talk about it. It's not money. People seem to think I'm doing this for money. I'm not. I could have joined this bandwagon early last year and made way more money. I've probably lost millions of dollars by getting into AI as late as I did. But I got in because I was interested in it. DeepSeek V3 was mind-blowing. It's like, oh my God, this is so much faster and cheaper than any other model, and it's roughly as smart as Claude 3 is. That's super cool. I want to play with this more. And I got really deep in. But the thing that I haven't admitted much is I was scared as hell. I was so nervous about talking about AI. Because I would read the things others said about AI and feel like it just didn't make sense. I'd read the sentence of like, none of this clicks, none of this logically follows. I don't get this at all. I don't know if I'm smart enough. I don't think I'm quite cut out to have my own place in these AI conversations. And then about a month into me deep diving and researching and figuring out everything I could, reading the DeepSeek papers, just nerding out about it obsessively for like a month, I realized the reason everyone else sounded like I realized the reason everything else didn't make sense to me is because none of them make fucking sense. The vast majority of AI influencers don't know jack shit about AI or influencing and get away with it because there was not enough content about it at the time. To this day, I still see the most brain-dead AI takes on Twitter all of the time. I see a ton of them on YouTube as well. And thank the fucking gods, there are now good AI YouTubers now. I'm not saying I'm one of them. I still think I'm one of the less good ones, honestly. But one of the best ones has been hanging out in my chat for most of the filming of this video. Where are you, AI Code King? He is great. He is one of the few AI channels that spawned later because there needed to be better discussions on how these things actually work as a developer using AI. And AI Code King is one of my favorite AI channels now. There's also AI Explained, who is fucking awesome. I love all of his stuff. I've learned so much from it. There are this small pocket of really good AI channels now that just didn't exist before. And I assumed I was the one who was wrong until I went a little deeper and realized, no, it is indeed the shitty crypto influencers who switched to AI because they wanted to make more money that were wrong. Crazy. But yeah, I have the same fatigue PewDiePie does when he's talking about this here, because there are so many influencers that don't know jack shit. There are so many companies that don't know jack shit. There are so many fucking like hotels and things that are just trying to embrace AI because they think that saying AI enough times makes money, similar to how saying NFT too many times theoretically could. And this makes it feel like a bubble. It makes it feel useless. It makes it easy to be angry at the whole thing. And anyone who is pissed about AI because they hear about it too much, don't see any value in it, they just see the potential threat of jobs being taken and all of these big companies making way more money for no reason. If that's all you're seeing, you should hate AI. Those things all suck, and they are the most visible part of AI. And I think it's a great thing for him to call out here because a lot of his audience probably has experienced AI through those bullshit things. And as a result, when they see him embracing it, associate him with those things and get mad. So I'm very thankful he touched on this because the problem goes way deeper than he even seems to know. The majority of the time you're hearing about AI, it's because someone's being paid to talk about it, not because someone's actually interested in it. And I am very thankful for the small number of resources from people who actually just care a lot about this shit. Oh, one other shout out. Simon Willison. Simon Willison is the creator of Django, one of the most important frameworks in the history of the web. Simon Willison also runs a blog that has quickly become a largely AI-focused blog. It's one of my favorite sources of information about AI. This is awesome because Simon just got into it and now is a good source of information on it, not because he was paid to. In fact, he makes criminally too little money, and I've been harassing him now for months to start taking sponsors. And he might finally, fingers crossed, take his first sponsor soon, as long as they're not conflicting with the interests of him. He really does not want to let a sponsor bias him. I totally get it. I have so much sympathy for where he's at and how hard he's trying to do this right. But Simon deserves to make more money than he is. He's making a couple thousand-ish from his subscriptions for people on his newsletter, and that's it. This is such a valuable source. He should be paid for it. FaZe, cut this to when I was first shouting out AI Code King. Thanks again for stopping by, Code King. In his words, the reason I'm doing this is very similar for why he started his channel, because there was no channel like LTT for AI. That's what he wanted to be. And I'll tell you straight up, Code King, I know people at LTT that see you this way and watch your shit. So you're very much succeeding. If you ever want an intro to Luke, let me know. I'm more than happy to intro you, man. Good shit. How many of the takes have I touched here? Cool. Let's go back to the video.
Even here on YouTube, the AI features are so useless.
Oh, God. Let's do a fun experiment, actually. Let's go to YouTube Studio and see what it suggests are videos I should make. Let me go here so I don't leak things. Here's the Content tab, and here's the Inspiration button. This will generate ideas for videos, as well as really cringe thumbnails. $3 $100 for an AI to learn me. What the fuck? What even is this? What is it even trying to say here? Are they using fucking GPT-2 for this shit? GLM versus Claude for serious coding. And look at that beautiful thumbnail. Are you joking? 4, the TypeScript problems still here 2 years later. The surprising evolution of developer tools. GitHub, can we trust private repos? That one's almost good. But it's so funny that even they don't seem to understand the relationship between thumbnails and titles, where they're just repeating the title in the thumbnail. Oh, God, it's so fucking cringe. It's so bad. It's so bad. Selling AI to learn me, $100. Please respond. Actually, though. Oh God, Coke's still doing AI video gen ads. This is so cringe. Like, why? Why? There's no reason for this. You're fucking Coca-Cola. You can afford a real ad. I hate this shit so much. I hate this so much. Apparently, the $100 for AI thing is influenced by the nano chat videos because those did really well. That makes a lot of sense, actually. Good call it. And thank you, Tech Brew Boss, for the sub. Really appreciate that. Very real. Lewis, to be very honest, feel the PMs just want to make use of AI to have nice OKRs. Yep. And then when the end of the quarter comes, they notice the AI wasn't really super helpful for their scope. Yep. I've seen that a lot. Yeah, I know I need to read the new ChatGPT browser Atlas like breakdown. I have that on my list. Back to PewDiePie. I'm going to put this as a source.
It's just become the hot next buzzword, and it's very annoying. But on the other hand, the people that just hate AI are equally centrist take coming. They're all bad, and I'm just kidding. But it's like I don't know if you heard Markiplier got canceled because he used AI. Please don't cancel me, please. If anyone.
I will avoid making jokes about all of the things that PewDiePie is cancelable for.
Watches Markiplier, click away the video right now. It's not gonna be good. No, but from trying to self-host AI, I realized just how much misinformation there is about AI, especially because I didn't know anything about it. So, without further ado, what model can I run on this thing? Well, I asked AI itself. I went straight to the source. I was like, what model can I run? It goes, bro, I got you, Llama 70B. And I was like, cool, it runs. It's not bad, but I didn't really go like, wah. I want to go, ah, you know? I want to feel like, whoa, look at the beast computer, beast AI. I didn't get that opinion. If anything, I was like, that was surprisingly easy. I think I can run this on 4 GPUs, actually. Lo and behold, it runs on 4 GPUs. I have not maxed out at all. What am I going to do? Have them talk to each other? Then I get it running on 2 GPUs. What am I going to do with that? Give them a little tea party? No. I want to... Both! I want to max out. Can a guy max out? It's the fattest stack of AI I can slap on this thing. Because it ain't 70p, I tell you. So I mathed the math. I was like 100. The timing was just insane. And I ran it and I was like, oh, I did the thing. I was like, ah. It feels exactly like ChatGPT, but it's fast as. It's so fast. I can't read that fast. Can you read that fast? It's crazy. So I was like, I did it. I maxed out. But I think I can get it running on 4 GPUs. You see, to deploy AI, I use VLLM. You can do different things. I use VLLM, which means I have to stare at the VLLM loading screen. Running AI, everyone's hardware is going to be different and differently optimized. So you need to have like a little cookbook that you set of different parameters before you fire off that thing. And it takes a while for it to load up. And I've been staring at that loading for too long. I swear I understand what the incomprehensible reading text means without being able to read it. That will never run. But then when it does run, it's like, wow. I go, ah! Sorry, I need to stop doing that. But I realized I could probably run this model on 4 GPUs. Lo and behold, ChatOS runs on 4 GPUs. I'm like, I should be happy, right? But I'm not, because I want to max out. Can a guy just max out? Is that too much to ask? So if you math the math, I should be able to run a 240 billion parameter model. I should. And you know what? There is. Gwen 235B. But there's 2 problems. Number 1, I tried it and it never fucking runs. Number 2, even if I do get it running, I don't have enough memory to actually use it. I could maybe fart at it at best and it would die instantly. Maybe a little squeak back. I don't know if I'm lucky. But I thought, hell, for the sake of the memes, let's max out and get this thing running. And finally, it runs.
Oh. Let's go.
I couldn't believe it. I was like, yes, I did it. Finally. I had to set this thing so it spreads out equally. I don't know if you knew that. So now you know that. To me, this felt like a huge win, but I decided to keep trying. I was like, okay, maybe I can load it with more tokens. So I double it and it runs. I was like, okay, nice. Now I can maybe sneeze at it. Maybe I could even do a little wave. Like, it's not practical is what I'm saying. But I double it again and it loads. I double it. It goes to 16,000, 32,000, 64,000. I get to 100,000 tokens on this bitch, which is practically a book. Like, amazing. I can actually run and use this model. 235 million. Yeah. Chinese AI. Then I saw this thing programmed locally. That's when I realized I wish I never run this model. Too much power. I'm not even joking. I've been learning how to program as...
Okay, so cut to the I've been learning how to program for the next point. Yep, here we go. This next part is where he starts to touch a little closer to home. This is where we get to finally talk a bit about coding.
I never run this model. Too much power. I'm not even joking. I've been learning how to program as part of my tech journey. And then I saw this thing programmed locally offline on my computer. My soul just left my body. I was like, well, there goes that ambition. I'm just kidding, by the way. I still think it's an amazing skill to learn, and I've been enjoying it so much because it's like, it takes up so much focus of your brain. But I also find it really cool to see your own computer write code for you. When you host AI on your own, it's not going to be able to do anything. It doesn't have search.
Okay, we'll come back for this part. When you host it on your own, it won't do anything, but cut like right after you see it improving itself. Or like you see it writing code. I have a lot of thoughts on this part about how AI can motivate, but also demotivate programmers. Also, a good call out from AI Code King. That was him using Aider, which is one of the OG AI coding CLI tools, like the first one. Also, the creator of one of the first really good benchmarks for AI code stuff. It's so good. Yeah. PewDiePie's walked in and is really doing the developer thing right. Like, he recently embraced the shit out of Linux and did a great job there. But this is a thing I really want to think about and touch on a bit. The idea of like, both, does AI mean we should stop learning how to code? But also, does AI now, but also, can AI help us as we learn how to code? These are things I've touched on in a couple different videos, but I want to take the opportunity to go a little bit deeper. Because on one hand, AI is absolutely changing the shape of the software development industry, but it's also a really good tool for learning and advancing your learning faster. There's been a running joke in software development forever that we're just Google searching things and copy pasting from Stack Overflow. Yeah, you're probably doing that a lot if you're a junior dev, and you're probably looking at sources and docs and things a lot, even as an experienced dev. You're thinking more than you're actually writing. People seem to think, like when they're not necessarily yet coders, that their typing speed is what blocks them from being successful as a dev, and that you can't code faster than you can type. Some of the best devs I've ever known still like hunt and peck with 2 to 3 fingers on each hand. There are a lot of great devs that don't type properly at all, because dev is much more about thinking and properly understanding the systems you're building than it is about how fast you can fucking type. But that means you need to understand the systems that you're building. And that's where I find the AI tools get dangerous. To be thoughtful, or how do I put this? To use these tools to better yourself, you have to never let them go beyond your own knowledge. You can't let the AI agent go write code you don't understand yet or solve problems you don't know how to solve. These tools are way better when you use them to solve problems you already understand, but want to go focus on something else. If you already know how to implement a calculator on a web page, then maybe let the AI generate that while you go solve something you don't understand as well. And if you want to better understand something, don't ask the AI to do it. Ask the AI how to do it and to teach you the right way. Ask it to explain things. Ask it to elaborate on things. Ask it questions, not to do tasks. If you let the AI do things you don't know how to do yet, if you let it extend past your own knowledge, you're not going to build that knowledge and you're not going to understand what it does. This is also why I push for hiring managers and people who are in the process of hiring people to at least be decent at the thing they're hiring for, because you won't be a good manager, you won't be good at hiring, you won't be good at finding the right person if you don't understand the thing you're hiring for. All the worst managers I ever had as an engineer were people who didn't code. And one of the best ones I ever had stopped coding, but got really nerdy about it a few years before, realized he was better at people than code, but understood it well enough to understand who was and wasn't pulling their weight and ask good questions in meetings and be useful. Don't let the AI go beyond your capability if you also want to be useful. And I think that our friend PewDiePie here did a great job with this. On one hand, he's inherently limited because he's only running local models, which are really cool. We'll talk a bit more about local models momentarily. But those local models are nowhere near as good at coding as some of the ones you can run in the cloud are, like Claude and GPT-5 and all of these things still meaningfully outperform any model you can download and run on your own machine. So he's limited by how good they are at coding through that. But he also seems to be making a very deliberate choice to use these tools to augment his abilities and learn rather than go past his capabilities as he is learning.
When you host AI on your own, it's not going to be able to do anything. It's like, it takes up so much focus of your brain. But I also find it really cool to see your own computer write code for you. When you
I'm going to go like one frame earlier for this next part. Cool. I don't know if there's going to be a good place to talk about the local model thing. So I'm going to do it now because I don't know if there's a good spot in the video. Local models are really, really cool. Not because they can be just as smart as the really fancy common ones in the cloud, but local models are useful for a ton of other things. They're useful in the sense that like you're not sharing the data so you can do more personal things with it. It's possibly the only real use case for image and video models. If I have images that I don't want to give to some other provider or cloud, like images of people that have passed away that I care a lot about, and I want to just enhance this photo and increase the resolution, I don't want to send that off to Google to do for me. I don't want people to have these assets. This is my very personal data. And using these tools to work with that data on my machine offline allows me to use them for things I would never otherwise touch them for. It also allows for lower latency, less reliance on external processes, and more ownership and control, which are almost always really good things. It's nice to own and trust the things you use and not have to worry about the Claude model suddenly performing way dumber than it did before. It's a very nice thing to own, understand, and control that stuff, even if the power costs for running my local GPU to do an image generation is roughly as expensive as it would be for me to outsource it to a better model in the cloud. Still hilarious how expensive the power side is, but yeah. That aside, local models have a lot of potential benefits, especially around data you might not want to share. I don't want every image in my phone to be accessible by Apple. I don't want Apple to know every single thing I've ever taken a picture of on my device. But if when I take a picture, my device can categorize it and add tags when it looks at the image, when it processes it, and now I can search cat in iPhoto and have all of the photos of cats that I've taken appear immediately, that's a really cool use of a local model. There's a lot of reasons that local models can be really good. And the idea that they'll be just as smart and powerful as the really nice ones we use in the cloud is just straight up fucking delusional. We're not trying to replace GPT-5 with something that can run on our phones. Anyone who's saying that or expects that in the future is delusional and doesn't get this shit at all. There will never be a 3 billion or 10 billion parameter model that performs as well as what we see from GPT-5 today. The science does not allow for that to happen. That said, there are things we can do with those limitations that are really useful for us on a day-to-day basis that we might not want to have running in the cloud. There's a lot of good uses for local models, and I'm thankful for people like PewDiePie for exploring this. I don't see a future where we're buying $3,000 boxes to run in our apartments to have our local AI at the average household, the way we have a random like Amazon box that lets us talk to it. Like, we're not going to have NVIDIA powered AI boxes in everyone's houses. That makes no sense for a billion fucking reasons. Same reason we don't have servers at the average person's house. But our phones doing this could make a lot of sense for a lot of reasons. Yeah. There are some models that are getting close. I know Mini Max is really, really good. The Mini Max M2 model is around 200 billion parameters and gets somewhat similar performance to Sonnet 4.5 for coding. Very, very exciting. Someone saying that in 3 years max, there will be 1 billion parameter models that are better than GPT-5. I'll put a lot of money down on that if somebody wants to. I'll gladly bet 10 grand plus on this. There's no world in which that happens. Anyways, next favorite piece. We're going to talk about AGI a little bit.
For you. When you host AI on your own, it's not going to be able to do anything. It doesn't have search, it doesn't have memory, it doesn't have any functions whatsoever. You can just talk to it. So I started giving it all these features, but I made itself give those features. I was like, Marzia, check this out, Marzia. The machine is making the machine. I don't know. I just thought it was really cool. Okay, welcome to my tutorial. No one has so far made it through the entire demo. So a true testimony to your attention span. This is like the meme of like, my buddy's gonna show you this. You have to pretend you like it. PewDiePie's gonna show his web UI. You have to pretend you like it. First off,
I do like it. I think it's really cool that PewDiePie is making his own UI. That said, if you want a UI that has every single model, like literally all of them, like every single one, for just $8 a month, I highly recommend T3 Chat. Very proud of what we built here. $8 a month is a good deal. And if you want an even better one, use code PewDiePie at checkout and your first month will only be $1. We just changed auth providers, so things are a little broken for that because I haven't signed in on this browser since. Give me one sec. There we go. Much better. I'll retake that. Yeah. Okay, retake on that. Funny things in my recents here. As cool as making your own UI for AI chat is, if you want one that has every single model for a way better price, T3 Chat is something I built at the beginning of the year because I got really excited about AI stuff. And it's only $8 a month, and you have access to all of the models, like every single model you'd ever possibly want to use. And as soon as the new ones drop, we go out of our way to get them added as quickly as possible, including Minimax, which was just recommended by our friend AI Code King. If you want all of these for $8 a month, I have bad news. Your first month will only be $1 if you use code PewDiePie at checkout. Yes, every model for a whole month for $1. That said, building your own alternative is really cool too. Let me go make that code active before I forget to. Cool. Code is added. Anyways. And for those patiently awaiting our mobile app, coming soon. You wonder why we've been quiet? We've been working hard. The auth overhaul may or may not be part of that. But that was not what I wanted to talk about PewDiePie doing here. As cool as this all is, the tools bit was really, really good. So let's let him talk a little more first.
It has toggle sidebar. Check this out. It toggles. And look, toggles here too. Now if I want to talk to AI, I go, hi. It's really fucking fast. Like, damn. 216 tokens per second. It has audio as well.
Sure, here's a joke for you. Why don't scientists trust atoms? Because they make things up.
Haha. So I started adding more features to the AI just to test it out. And because there are other options that you can self-host that are really good, but it was easier and quicker to just do it myself because it was so capable. And it looked more epic hackery because it matched my aesthetic on my computer. But
Let me check the notes I have here. Yeah, this is the part I was looking for. Cool. Yeah. Okay, different cut for that. Okay. The UI is fun and all. The smart models are cool and all, but there's a piece that he touches on here that honestly is knowledge that I don't even know how to put this. He's punching up in a way that I would not expect him to understand this early in his AI journey. That's a thing I've been feeling and thinking a lot about. And once again, is a thing I'm really excited to go into a bit more.
I want to use it for. And that's when it hit me, like, you don't
Let me skip it a bit more.
give them search and boom. This video, but it takes a long time. So the second thing, I was running these tiny models, 2B, only 2 billion parameters. You could probably run this. I think most computers can probably run this. You could run it on your phone, although it'll be very slow. But I realized that smaller models are amazing. They're really dumb because they don't have any information stored on them. So they start hallucinating and coming up with gibberish. But literally, you just give them search and boom. It adds a nanosecond to the query and that's it because they're so fast. You give them RAG and you have an amazing tool for fast information. I feel like that's what I think AI is good for. That's what I want to use it for. And that's when it hit me, like, you don't need this beast computer to run AI at all. It's all about the tool set you give it.
Louder for those in the back. You don't need the smart model at all. What matters is the tools that you give it. That is a piece of wisdom that we as an industry are still trying to learn ourselves. Like, I know so many places that just refuse to accept this fact and are going so hard on trying to squeeze slight bits more of intelligence out of these models instead of embracing the fact that the models are limited by what they're allowed to do and the tools that they have access to, not by how many parameters you can stuff in it. AGI is not a smarter model. AGI is going to be a set of tools for a smart enough model. I've been thinking this for a while now. And you can even look at benchmarks that show this. Most of the new benchmarks we have, especially for software stuff, have two pieces. There's obviously the model that is running, but there's also the harness, the thing that it's running in, the set of tools it has access to do things like traverse the code base, look information up online, apply changes to the code. That harness of tools that the models are given to work within is as if not more important than the model itself is. And these tools have been the big improvement we've been focusing on throughout the year. The whole idea of an agent is, for the most part, a model allowed to run with tools so that it can complete multiple tasks and get the data it needs to complete those tasks. We don't need super smart models to do that. We need models that are super good at calling tools correctly to do that. And we're finally starting to see a surge of these AI models and we're finally starting to see a surge of LLMs, both big, expensive, fancy ones from the big labs, as well as cheap ones from those labs, as well as open weight models from the likes of Moonshot with Kimi, as well as Minimax, and even things with the GLM models too, where they're finally giving us open weight models that are good at tool calls, which means you might have a really small model that isn't very smart, doesn't have much information in it, but it can get the information it needs by using your tools. That is really, really exciting. And it's awesome that he's realized the value in his AI isn't necessarily that the model itself is super smart, he can run it locally. It's that the tools it has access to enables it to get the right information at the right time. Huge development, or huge realization for him to have, and I'm pumped to get to talk about this idea a bit more, because people seem to think that the upgrade from Claude 4 to 4.5 is going to change the way they code forever. When in reality, a lot of the change, a lot of the things that make that good are improvements to the tooling around the model. And a large part of why these other models feel so good now, why something like Minimax V2 is as incredible as it is because we can throw it into these really good harnesses and it knows how to operate them. We're no longer we need to stop thinking of models as the vehicle for this crazy stuff and more as the driver. But now we have to build it a car. The model can't go anywhere if it doesn't have the right vehicle to go there with. And we got to build that for it. And it's also really cool that throughout his video, PewDiePie is using the models and using the tools he has to add new tools, to build new things. The idea of the model being able to improve itself, not by making itself smarter, but by building itself the tools it needs to get more information, to do more and affect more, that is really cool. Also requires really careful sandboxing and a lot of thought to make sure you're safely enabling the models to do these things. But right now, we're not in a models need to be way smarter surge. We're in a models need much better tooling to do what we want them to do surge. To go one step further with this, the big thing that means AGI will happen is when the models get smart enough that they can make themselves smarter. I don't necessarily know if that can happen, but what absolutely can happen is the models can give themselves better tools, eventually building their own tools, making their own code, and executing that code. That is how the models can self-improve. Not by making the brain in their head bigger, but by making the car they're driving better. How hilarious is it that through a fucking 20-minute PewDiePie video, the gaming YouTuber, we got to touch on the entire ecosystem of AI stuff, from why I don't like from why I don't like media generation stuff to how we actually get to AGI. It's kind of wild that he managed to hit so many of these things in one single video. It feels like the only thing he really missed here is AI psychosis, which thankfully Eddie Burback just made a groundbreaking video on. This is one of the best YouTube videos ever made. ChatGPT Made Me Delusional by Eddie Burback. And if you haven't watched it, I highly recommend you go watch that next. Me even saying this is a direct attack on my own channel, because going to another channel when you finish my video is telling YouTube that going to a video that's not on my channel after you watch one of mine is a really big anti-signal to YouTube, because it says other people's content is more interesting than my content to my viewer. Despite that, I'm still plugging this video because I do actually think it's that good that I'm willing to take a hit on my channel for it. Highly recommend it. Eddie killed it. 11 out of 10. That's all I have on this one. Thank you, PewDiePie, for the absolute chaos. Still can't believe that his video titled "Stop Using AI Right Now" is this good of a source of AI information, and I hope I have given you a good reason to think about it more deeply. Let me know what you guys think. Am I overreaching here, or is there actually good information from this video? I'm curious what y'all feel. Until next time, peace, nerds. Cool. Do you want to take this bet, Nest? I'll take it. I'll even do 5-to-1 odds with you. I'll do 10 grand to 2 grand that within, I don't know, 5 years, there won't be a 1 bill param model that can outperform GPT-5. I'd put money on it. Yeah, I've seen some real bad cases of AI psychosis myself and some friends. Yeah. Yo, Waba with the 20 bomb. God damn. Thank you so much for the support, man. Means a ton. Thank you so much. And another cheer too. You've given way too much money this stream, man. Appreciate it a ton, but never feel like you have to. This is a scary looking link. I don't think I can click that. Thank you, Code King, again for all the useful stuff here. And I totally agree. I don't think a billion param model could ever be as good as the current gen models unless there's a fundamental architectural shift in how LLMs work. And thank you, Aiden, for the resub, as well as Real Program. I did not see who you gifted the sub to, but I appreciate it. 2 vids away from him picking up Rust. Not wrong, Aiden. God, it's almost 8 o'clock. Jesus Christ. Okay, here's what I'm thinking. This one should be short, hopefully. Nope, this article's long. Fuck. Fuckity fuck. Any of these short? These all seem really long. Wait, fuck, I have to film ads. The Atlas blog post is short, but my thoughts on it are not going to be short. Yeah, I think I'm going to run. It's almost 8. I need to film ads tonight. And we'll be live tomorrow to film these. And if any other big news drops, cover that as well. I want to skate, but I'm not allowed still. My doctor won't let me. Let's figure out who we're raiding. And again, I'll be live tomorrow because I need to catch up. I've been so fucking behind on videos. I've been traveling too much. Alien could be fun to raid. I do kind of want to see the retro FPS game dev that Jit's doing. I think we're going to Jits. There's a non-zero chance I'll stream Friday or Saturday as well. I really want to have a backlog again. I dearly miss having that like 30 video backlog. I want it so bad. So I'll be grinding a lot more content soon. I'll see you guys a ton on stream. Thank you all again for coming through. If I missed you, Tech Brew Boss, really appreciate it. Thank you all again for coming through for the stream. Thank you to YouTube chat as well. If I missed any donations, I am so sorry for that. YouTube doesn't make it easy enough to see. This was super fun. Appreciate y'all a ton. Sorry for the late night Wednesday stream, but I'll do my best to make up for it with lots of awesome content as soon as I can. Goodbye, nerds. What time tomorrow? Probably the usual, like around 1 p.m. for PST. Fingers crossed. Bye, nerds. And goodbye to YouTube as well.